Nalalidaloka Tranaya Karuna Gana Ganatam Shamsaradava Nalalidaloka Tranaya Karuna Gana Ganatam Prapta Sakalyana Gunanavasya Vande Gurashi Charanaravrindam Prapta Sakalyana Gunanavasya Vande Gurashi Charanaravrindam Vande Gurashi Charanaravrindam Mahaprabhu Kirtana Nitya Gita Vaditramadhyam Manasurasena Mahaprabhu Romanchakam pasru tarangavajo Bande Gurashi Charanaravrindam Romanchakam pasru tarangavajo Bande Gurashi Shri Vigrahara Dana Nityanana Shringaratanma Niramajanado Juktasya bhaktamsa niyunjatopi Vande Gurashi Charanaravrindam Vande Gurashi Charanaravrindam Vande Gurashi Charanaravrindam Chaturvidhashi Bhagavat Prasado Svatana Triptan Hari Bhakta Sangha Chaturvidhashi Bhagavat Prasado Svatana Triptan Hari Bhakta Kridvaiva Tripte Bhajata Shadeva Vande Gurashi Charanaravrindam Shiradikama Bhavayara Para Madhura Lila Gunarupanamna Shiradikama Madhura Lila Pratikshana Dhanalupasya Vande Gurashi Charanaravrindam Pratikshana Vande Gurashi Charanaravrindam Nekunjayono Rati Kelisidai Jayali Jokti Apekshaniya Nikunjayo no Rati Kelisidai Jayali Tatrati Daksha Ativalavasya Bande Gurashi Charanara Vrindam Sakchadhari Dena Shamasta Shastri Ruktastatthava Vyataiva Sadvavi Kintu Prabhaja Priya Eva Tasya Bande Gurashi Charanara Vindam Kintu Prabhaja Priya Eva Tasya Bande Gurashi Yasya Prasada Bhagavat Prasado Yasya Prasadam Nagati Kutapi Yasya Prasada Bhagavat Prasado Yasya Prasadam Dayam Stovam Tasya Yasya Trinsandhyam Bande Gurashi Charanara Vrindam Yasa Trinsandhyam Nama O Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nitina Mine Nama Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Namaste Sarasvate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pachatari Shatarine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Ora Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Go Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare Rama Rama Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare Rama Rama Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna Hare Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Yaraya Nama Krishna Jadavaya Nama Jadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Nama Gopal Govindaram Shrimad Sudam Giridhari Gopina Madana Mohan Shri Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Sita Hari Guru Vaishnava Bhagavata Gita Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhattara Guna Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasara Guna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama. Shri Radha Nilamada Radha Nilamada Radhe. Jaya Jagannath, Jaya Baladeva, Jaya Subhadrama, Jaya Sudarshan Chakra. Jagan, Jaya Baladeva, Jaya Subhadrama, Jaya Sitaram, Jaya Sitaram, Jaya Sitaram, Jaya Lakshman Hanuman. Jaya Lakshmi Narasingha, Jaya Lakshmi Narasingha, Lakshmi Narasingha, Jaya Prahlad Maharaj. Nitai Gaura Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaura Premanandi Haribo. Jai Vishnu Para Paramsa Prabhajaka Acharya Sutara Saraswati Maharaj. यजमान के सब विष्णु भक्ति वेदांत स्वयं महाराज शिल प्रभुपाद की जय। इस्कॉन प्रतिष्ठित विविधि सांस्त प्रकचर वैष्णव शिरोमणि पतित पावन श्री प्रभुपाद जी महाराज की जय। श्री गौरिया गुरु वर्ग पतित उद्धार की जय। श्री रूप सनातन भट्ट रघुनाथ जीव गोपाल भट्ट दास गुण सदगोस्वामी प्रभु की जय। नामाचार्य श्री हरिदास ठाकुर जी की जय। अनंत गुरु विष्णु वृंद की जय। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासरि गौर भक्तवृंद की जय। जय परम दयाल श्री नित्यानंद प्रभु की जय। जय प्रेम नाम संकीर्तन एक जनक प्रेम पुरुषोत्तम श्री सच्चिनंदन स्मरण गौरंग श्री चैतन्य महाप्रभु गौर हरि मावृनावतार की जय। गोलोकेर प्रमधान हरिनाम संकीर्तन जय की जय। जुग धर्म हरे कृष्ण महामंत्र की जय। बृहद निदांग ट्रांसेंडेंटल बुक डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन सेवा की जय। श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप राधा कुंद समकुंद गिरिराज गोवर्धन की जय। श्री ब्रजभूमि वृंदावन मथुरा धाम की जय। देलोशिव श्री राधा नीला माधव की जय। श्री माया पूर्णवद्वीप एक चक्र धाम की जय। परम करुणा श्री श्री गौर निताई की जय। श्री पुरुषोत्तम चित्र जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय। श्री श्री जगन्नाथ स्वामी बलदेव प्रभु सुभद्रा देवी सुदर्शन चक्र भगवान की जय। श्री राम लक्ष्मण भक्त हनुमान जी की जय। भक्ति सर्व विघ्न विनाशन कृष्ण हरे भगवान की जय। गंगा माई जमुना माई की जय। तुलसी महारानी वृंद देवी भक्ति देवी की जय। श्री मथुरा रानी की जय। समवेत भक्त वृंद की जय। निताय गौरी प्रमानंदे। All glories to the assembly bodies. All glories to the assembly bodies. All glories to the assembly. All glories are glories. Glories to Shri Guru. Shri Guru.
Namaste Narasimhaya. Namaste Narasimhaya. Prahlad Ladadaine. Hiranyakashi Kuvasa. Shila टंका न कालाए, तो नरसिंहा पर तो नरसिम्हा, यतो यतो यामि ततो नरसिंहा, बाहे नरसिंहा हृदय नरसिम्हा, नरसिंहमदिं शरणं प्रपदे, तव कर कमल वरे नाका अद्भुत सिंगा, दलिता हिरण्यकशिपु तनुभृंगा, केशवदीर्ता नरहरि रूपा, जय जगदीश हरे, जय जगदीश हरे, जय जगदीश हरे। नाका हिरण्यकशिपु अवधीर्ता नरहरि रूपा, जय जगदीश हरे, जय नरसिंह देव, जय नरसिंह देव, जय नरसिंह देव, जय नरसिंह देव, जय भक्त प्रहलाद, जय भक्त प्रहलाद, जय भक्त प्रहलाद, जय प्रहलाद महाराज, जय जय प्रभुपाद, 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 बोल नरसिंह भगवान की जय, भक्त प्रहलाद की जय, प्रभुपाद महाराज की जय, गुरुदेव महाराज की जय। वृंदाय तुलसीदेवाय प्रियाय
Namo Namah Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namah Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namah Radha Krishna Seva Pavo Eya Vilasi Radha Krishna Seva Pavo Eya Vilasi Shetomara Sharanaloy Saravancha Purnahoy Kripa Kori Korotare Vrindavanavasi Kripa Kori Korotare Vrindavanavasi Moraya Vilas Vilas Kunjari Avas Nayane Heri Bosada Jugala Rupayashi Nayane Heri Bosada Jugala Ruparashi Eni Vedana Jaro Sakir Anugata Koro Sevadi Karadie Koro Nijadasi Sevadi Karadie Koro Nijadasi Sina Krishna Dase Koi Eye Namora Hoi Shri Radha Govinda Preme Sadaya Navasi Shri Radha Govinda Preme Sadaya Navasi Namo Namah Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namah Tulasi Krishna Preyasi Namo Namah. Yani Kani Cha Papani Brahma Hatyati Kani Cha Tani Tani Pranashanti Pradakshina Pade Pade. Yani Kani Cha Papani Brahma Hatyati Kani Cha Tani Tani Pranashanti Pradakshina Pade Pade. Yani Kani Cha Papani Brahma Tyati Kani Cha Tani Tani Pranashanti Pradakshina Pade Pade. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani. Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi. Nitya Gaura Haribol, 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 Nitya Gaura Haribol.
Oh Tulsi, Lord Krishna, For you again and again. Mighty Saints, return to service of Shri Radha and Krishna. Whoever takes shelter of you has wishes fulfilled. Bestow your mercy upon him, you make him resident of Vrindavan. My desire is that he also give me a residence in pleasure groves of Sri Vrindavan Dham. Thus we did in my vision, always behold his beautiful pastimes, Radha and Krishna. I beg you to make me a fellow Kaveri damsels of Raj. Please give me the privilege of devotional service and let me your own maid servant. This very fallen and lowly servant of Krishna praise. May I always sing love Shri Radha and Govind. Shri Mati Tulsi Maharani Vrindavi Ki Jai. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Sikhyastakam Ki Jai. Chaito Darpanamakjanam Bhava Mahadava Nirivapanam Shayakari Vachantika Vitaranam Vidyavadu Jivanam Anandam Buddhi Vardhanam Pratipadam Punamrita Shradanam Sarvatma Smanam Paramparam Vijayati Shri Krishna Sankirtanam Nam Namakari Vaudha Nija Sarva Shaktis Tatrarpita Niyamita Shmarane Nakala Itadrusi Tava Kripaya Bhagavan Mamapi Durdhaiva Midrishamiya Janinanuraga Trinadapi Sunichena Tarorapi Saishnuna Amanina Manadena Kitaniya Sadahari Radhanam Najanam Nasundarim Kavitam Vajagari Shakamaye Mama Janmani Janmanishwari Bhavatar Bhakti Raituki Twayi Ainandatanuja Kinkaram Patitamam Visame Bhavam Buddha Kripaya Tapapada Pankajastita Duli Sadrisham Vichintaya Nayanam Galora Shrudharaya Vadinam Gadagadarudaya Gira Pulakai Nichitam Bapukada Tabanam Grahane Bhavisati Juga Itam Nimishena Chakusha Prabhusa Itam Shunya Itam Jagata Sarvam Govinda Virahiname Asli Shabapa Daratam Pinashtumam Adarshanar Marmahatam Karotuva Chitatatthava Vidadatulam Pato Matpranatastu Saivana Para Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Sikhyastakam Ki Jai. Namo Mahavadhanaya Krishna Prema Pradaya Hare Krishna Krishna Chaitanya Guru Tishin. Glory to the Shri Krishna Sankirtana, which cleanses the heart, all the dust accumulated for years, and extinguishes the fire of conditional life of repeated birth and death. This Sankirtan moment is the prime benediction for humanity at large, because it spreads the rays of the benediction moon. It is the life of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the ocean of transcendental bliss and enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we're always anxious. O my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings, and thus you have hundreds of millions of names like Krishna and Govind. In these transcendental names you have invested all your transcendental energies. There are no hard and fast rules for chanting these names. O my Lord, out of kindness, you enable us to easily approach you by holy names. But I'm so unfortunate that I have no attraction for them. Once you chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself Lord and stroll in the street, one should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer our respect to others. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your cause of devotional service, birth after birth. O son of Maharaj Nanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor. Yes, some or other I have fallen in this ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. O my Lord, when will my eyes be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant your holy name? When will my voice choke up? Or will the hairs of my body stand on end of the recitation of your name? O Govinda, feeling your separation, I am considering moment to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I feel all vacant in the world in your absence. I know no one but Krishna is my Lord, and he should remain so, even if sunders me roughly by his embrace, or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything, for he is always my worshipful Lord, unconditionally. Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Sikhyastakam Ki Jai. There are 10 offenses in matter with chanting the holy name of the Lord that should be avoided. They are as follows. 1. To blaspheme the very... 2. To consider names of demigods and of Shiva and of Brahma to be equal to or independent of the name Lord Vishnu. 3. To disobey the orders of the spiritual master. 4. To blaspheme the Vedic literature or literatures and pursuits of Vedic version. 5. To consider the glory of chanting Hare Krishna to be imagination. 6. To give some interpretation of the holy name of the Lord. 7. To commit sinful activities on strength of chanting the holy name of the Lord. 8. To consider chanting Hare Krishna is one of the auspicious ritualistic activities which often Vedas as spiritual activity, karma, kanda. 9. To instruct the faithless person by the glories of holy name. And 10. To not have complete faith in chanting of holy names and to maintain material attachments, even if understanding so many instructions on this matter. It is also an offense to be retained while chanting. Every devotee who claims to be Vaishnava must carefully guard against these 10 offenses in order to quickly achieve the desired success. Krishna Prema. Now let us offer our most humble obeisance unto all the Vaishnavas, devotees of the Lord. They are just like desired trees, they can fulfill the desires of everyone. And they are full of compassion for the
fallen, conditioned souls. Vanchakalpa Tarabhyascha, Kipasindhuyevcha, Patitanam Pavanebhyo, Vaishnavebhyo, Namo Namaha, Vaishnava Thakur Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nitinamani Namaste Saraswati Deve Guruvani Pacharani Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paskati Dasatani. Shri Guru Pranama Prayers Ki Jai. Om Aganya Timirandasya Yananjana Salakaya Chaksurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manubhistam Sapritam Yena Bhutali Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Jataha Pajakamalan Shri Gurun Vaishnavamsa Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahaguna Ragunatanvitam Tam Sajivam Saidvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahaguna Lalita Shri Vishaka Nivitamsa Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nitinamani Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paschatya Desatarine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Tinamini Shri Varsavanavi Devi Dayitaya Kripabdaye Krishna Sambandha Vijnana Dayane Prabhave Namaha Madhur Ujvala Premadya Shri Rupanugavaktita Shri Gora Karuna Shakti Vigrahaya Namostute Namaste Gauravani Shri Murtaye Dinatarine Rupanuga Virudapa Apasidanta Dvantaharine Namo Gora Kishoraya Sakshad Vairagya Murtaye Vipralambara Sambode Padambujayate Namaha Namo Bhakti Vinodaya Sachitanandanamine Gora Shakti Swarupaya Rupanuga Varayate Gora Vir Baba Bhumestvam Nistesta Sajjana Priya Vaishnava Sarvabhuma Sri Jagannathayate Namaha Panchakalpatarabhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Padayate Krishna Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gurichase Namaha Panchakalpa Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhaktarupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakyam Namami Bhaktasaktikam. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Jayatam Surator Pangur Mama Manda Matergati Matsarva Swapadam Bojo Radha Madana Mohano Divyad Vindaranya Kalpradumadaha Shimad Ratnagara Simhasanastito Shimad Radha Srila Govinda Devo Prastali Bihi Sevyamano Smarami Shiman Rasa Rasarambi Vamsivata Tatastita Karsan Venus Swanir Gopir Gopinatakstriyeshtuna Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanustute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasudeva Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Shri Guru Pranama prayers ki jai. Shri Brahma Samhita ki jai. Ishwara Parama Krishna Sachitananda Vigraha Anadir Adir Govinda Sarva Karana Karanam Chentamani Prakata Satma Sukalpa Riksha Laksha Vritesu Surabhira Vipadiyantam Lakshmi Sahasra Satasambram Sevyamanam Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Venam Kvananda Alminda Dalayataksham Barhavatam Samasitam Buddha Sundarangam Kandarpa Koti Kamaniya Visesha Sobham Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Alola Chandra Kalasadvana Madhya Vamsi Ratnam Gadam Pranayakeli Kalavilasam Shyamam Tribanga Lalitani Prakasam Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Angani Yasya Sakalendriya Vrittimanti Pasyanti Panti Kalyanti Chiram Jaganti Ananda Chinmaya Sadujvala Vigrahasya Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Advaitam Achyutam Anadim Anantarupam Adyam Purana Purusham Navayovanam Cha Vede Sadurlabham Adurlabham Atma Bhakto Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Pantasta Koti Satavatsara Sampragamyo Vayo Ratapi Manaso Muni Pungamanam Sobhyasti Yat Prapadasimya Vichintya Tatve Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ekopya Sora Chayatam Jagadanda Kotim Yas Jakti Rasti Jagadanda Chayayadanta Andanta Rasta Paramanu Chayanta Rastam Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Yad Bhava Bhavita Diyo Manjasta Taiva Samprapya Rupa Mahima Saniyana Bhusa Suktarya Meva Nigama Pratitaistuvanti Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Dani Vitabis Tabilya Eva Nija Rupa Tayakalabi Goloka Eva Nivasat Akilat Mabuto Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Premanjana Churita Bhakti Vilochanena Santak Sadeva Hidayesu Vilokayanti Yam Shanma Sundaram Achintya Gunaswarupam Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ramadi Murti Sukalali Amenatistan Nanavataram Akarod Bhuvanesu Kintu Krishna Swayam Samabhavat Paramam Pumam Yo Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Yasya Prabha Prabhavato Jagananda Koti Koti Swasesu Vasudadi Vibhuti Binam Tad Brahma Niskalam Anantam Ashesha Bhutam Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Maya Hiyasya Jagananda Satani Sute Chai Gunya Tad Vishaya Veda Vitaya Manam Sadva Valambi Parasatvam Visuddha Satvam Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Ananda Chinmaya Rasat Mataya Manasu Ya Praninam Patifalam Smaratam Upetya Lilayatena Bhuvanani Jayaya Jasram Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Goloka Namni Nijadamni Talecha Tasya Devi Mahesu Haridama Sute Sutesu Te Te Prabhava Nichaya Vihitasya Yena Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Shististati Pralaya Sadhava Saktireka Chayeva Yasya Bhuvanani Vivarti Durga Ichanu Rupam Apiyasya Chechestate Sa Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Shiram Yatadadi Vikara Visesa Yoga Sanjayate Nahitata Pritakasti Hetu Yasambutam Apitata Samupaiti Karyad Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Deepacha Devahita Santanam Abhyapetya Deepayate Vivita Hetu Samanudana Yastadrekeva Hicha Vishnu Taya Vibhati Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Yakarna Narna Vajale Bhajatisma Yoga Nidram Ananta Jagananda Saruma Kupa Adhara Saktim Avalambya Param Swamurtim Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Yasyaika Nisvasita Kalamatavalamya Jivanti Loma Vilaja Jaganandanata Vishnur Mahansahi Yasya Kalaviseso Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Baswan Yatasma Sakalesa Nijesu Teja Sriyam Kiyat Prakatayat Apitat Vatatra Brahmaya Esa Jagananda Vidanukarta Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Yat Pada Palava Yugam Vinidaya Kumbha Twande Pranama Samayesa Ganadi Raja Vignan Vihantam Alamasya Jagatrayasya Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Agnir Mahiga Ganamambu Marudisasya Kalastatatma Manasiti Jagatrayani Yasmad Bhavanti Vibhavanti Visanti Yancha Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Yas Chaksuresa Savita Sakala Grahanam Raja Samasta Suramurti Rasesa Teja Yasya Gaya Pramati Sambrita Kala Chakro Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Dharmota Papa Nichaya Srutayastapamsi Brahma Dikita Patagava Tayasta Jiva Yadata Matra Vibhava Bhakatapa Bhava Govindam Adipurisham Tamaham Bhajami Yastrindra Gopa Matavendra Mahosva Karma Bandhanu Rupa Falabhajana Matanoti Karmani Nirdahati Kintucha Bhakti Bhajam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Yam Krodha Kama Sahaja Pranayadi Bhitti Vatsalya Moha Guru Gaura Vasevya Bhavai Sanchintya Tasya Sadrisim Tanamapurete Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Shiyakanta Kanta Parama Purusha Kalpataravo Tuma Bhumish Chintamani Ganamayi Toyam Amritam Kataganam Natyam Gamanam Apivam Sipriya Saki Chidanandam Jyoti Param Apitat Aswadyam Apicha Sayatra Shiradi Bhi Shavati Shirabi Bhyashta Sumahan Nime Saradakyo Vavrajati Nahiyatra Pisamaya Bhaje Sweta Dvipam Tamaham Ihagolakam Itiyam Vidantas Te Santakshiti Virlachara Katipaye Ishwara Parama Krishna Sachitananda Vigraha Anadiradi Ravindat Karana Karanam Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Shri Brahma Samhita Ki Jai Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Shrimad Bhagavatam Canto 2 Chapter 10 Verse number 14 Adhi Daivam Atadhyatman Adibhutam Iti Prabhuhu Ataikam Porusham Viryam Tridad Vidyattatachinu Adidevam, the controlling entities. Ata, now. Adyatman, the controlled entities. Adibhutam, the material bodies. Iti, Thus, Prabhu, the Lord, Ata, in this way, Ekam, one only, Porusham, of his lordship, Viryam, potency, Trida, in three, Abhidyata, divided, Tat, that, Shrinu, just hear from me. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Just hear from me how the potency of his lordship, meaning Krishna, divides one into three, called the controlling deities, the controlled entities, and the material bodies, in the manner mentioned above. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Antak sarira akasat Purushasya vichestata Oja saho balam jajne Tata prano mahan asu Anta sarire, within the body, akasat, from the sky, Purushasya, of Mahavishnu, Vichestata, while so trying or willing, Oja, the energy of the senses, Saha, mental force, Balam, bodily strength, Jajne, generated, Tata, thereafter, Prana, the living force, Mahanasu, the fountainhead of everyone's life. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. From the sky, situated within the transcendental body of the manifesting Mahavishnu, sense energy, mental force, and bodily strength are all generated, as well as the sum total of the fountainhead of the total living force. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Canto 2, Chapter 10, Text 16. Anupranantiyam prana Pranantam sarvajantusu Apanantam apananti Nara devam ivanuga Anuprananti, follow the living symptoms. Yam, whom, prana, senses, pranantam, endeavoring, sarvajantusu, in all living entities. Apanantam, stop endeavoring. Apananti, all others stop. Naradevam, a king. Iva, like. Anuga, the followers. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. As the followers of a king follow their lord, similarly, when the total energy is in motion, all other living entities move. And when the total energy stops endeavoring, all other living entities stop sensual activities. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada. The individual living entities are completely dependent on the total energy of the Supreme Purusha. That means Mahavishnu. No one has independent existence, just as no electric lamp has independent effulgence. Each and every electrical instrument depends fully on the total powerhouse. The total powerhouse depends on the reservoir of water for generating electricity. Water depends on the clouds depend on the sun depends on the creation, and the creation depends on the movement of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thus, the Supreme Personality Godhead is the cause of all causes. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. As the followers of a king follow their Lord, similarly, when the total energy is in motion, all other living entities move. And when the total energy stops endeavoring, all other living entities stop sensual activities. So this is a further explanation of what's called interdependence. And what does that mean, interdependence? That means that one thing depends on something else. Nothing is independent. And the original cause of everything is Krishna. So that is real knowledge. And this was already explained previously in the Prabhupada talks about interdependence. One thing depends on another thing, on another thing, on another thing, on another thing. Eventually it all depends on Krishna, the supreme cause of all causes. Ishvara Parama Krishna, Satchitananda Vigraha, Anadiraja Govinda, Sarva Karana Karanam. So he's the cause of all causes. And he's also called the Summum Bonum. What does Summum Bonum mean? The greatest good, and also the ultimate source of all energy. Summum Bonum, the ultimate source of all energy. So, to understand the interconnectedness of everything, and to understand the original source of all energy, that is definition of God, the Supreme Personality. And as it says in the 9th chapter, 10th verse, it says, 9th chapter, 10th verse says, Maya dakshena prakriti suyate charachanam hetananena konteya jagat viparivartate. So this is a very important verse. And basically it says that Krishna, this material nature, which is one of my energies, is working under my direction, O son of Kunti, producing all moving and non-moving beings. Under its rule, this manifestation is created and annihilated again and again. So scientists have no real understanding of science, the science of material nature. They think that material nature is completely independent. There is no God. There's no superhuman being that's behind everything. They think that everything started by some kind of an accident, and that human beings are, let's say, some later development of this accidental and somewhat of a fortuitous, serendipitous development. And also that when you die, there's nothing, because we're just a bunch of chemicals, and so forth. It goes down the line. It's all nonsense, all unfounded, all unsubstantiated statements that have no real substance or substantive value. But it's taught as science in schools. And everything in the material world. But on the other hand, they contradict themselves by saying that the two basic major assumptions of science is, one, everything is functioning in an orderly way according to laws. And number two, if they experiment and study nature, they'll be able to figure out these laws. Wait a minute. When the United States Senate makes laws, they're called the lawmakers, right? And we have to follow. So who's the lawmaker of all these laws in nature? You see, when they discover one of the existing laws, they give their own name to it. And that's called plagiarism. Look that word up, plagiarism, Plagieriz something, plagiarism. That's plagiarism. You can get sued for that in the United States, right? But yet, when the scientists plagiarize God's creation, nobody says anything. Everyone's saying, "Oh no, there's no God. This guy Einstein, or this guy Maxwell, or this guy Faraday, or Newton, they discovered. They're the discoverer." It's as if because Columbus was the first European to come to America, they shouldn't call it America. They should call it Columbus. You say it's all nonsense. Yes, go ahead. What does it mean?
It is the practice of taking someone else's work or ideas and passing them off as one's own.
Bingo. Right. This is what the scientists are doing. And therefore they're nonsense. They should be rejected. They don't know anything. They don't know much about material nature. And whatever they know, they're misrepresenting it. The only thing that's correct is, yeah, nature is acting in an orderly way. And why is it? Because there's a superior intelligent person who made it orderly. That's why. Just like when somebody discovers something, they put their name onto it, they patent it, and it's their property for a certain number of years, right? If everyone goes around plagiarizing everybody else, that would be chaos. And there'd be constant, that would make the lawyers rich, of course. Then they'd be fighting one another. So this interconnectedness is a very important concept to understand. So here it explains that Prabhupada says, the individual living entities are completely dependent on the total energy of the Supreme Purusha, or the meaning is Mahavishnu. No one has independent existence, just as an electric lamp has independent, just as no electric lamp has independent effulgence. So you see, you start with the known to understand the unknown. Here's an example of an electric lamp. And he says, no one has independent existence, just as, so this is a simile, no electric lamp has independent effulgence. And now he's going to prove it. Each and every electrical instrument depends fully on the total powerhouse. Well, just like here, we have these electric boxes in this temple. But what are they connected to? If you go across the street, you'll see they're connected to other electric boxes established by Puget Sound Power. And those boxes are connected to a electric station. You see them every once in a while when you're driving around. There's a whole bunch of electrical wires and different things. And those electric stations are connected to the electric powerhouse belonging to Puget Power. And Puget Power is connected to either a dam that has turbines, and then they dam the water, and then they release water as they need it into the turbines. The turbines turn and make electrical energy that goes through these different wires to the electrical plant, and from the electrical plant to the different electrical stations, and from the stations to the electrical boxes, and then from the electrical boxes to individual houses. It's a whole system of interdependence, you see. So this is what's happening. Krishna expands himself as Balaram. Balaram expands himself as the first Chaturvyuha. Vasudeva and Sankarshan and Pradyumna and Aniruddha. And then from Sankarshan is expanded the second Chatur, and then from Sankarshan is expanded Narayana, and then Narayana expands the second Chaturvyuha of Vasudeva, Sankarshan, Pradyumna, and Aniruddha. And then the second Chaturvyuha Sankarshan expands the Vishnu incarnations for the material world, Mahavishnu, Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, and Shirodakshaya Vishnu. So this is all interdependence on the spiritual side. But the Vishnu incarnations, which are all spiritual and transcendental, they go on the material side, and they expand the material energy, and also all the living entities and from demigods to the middle planet people, and then the lower planet people, and of course Lord Brahma, and these are all energies of the Lord, just like the electrical energy is going through these wires. It's all energy. So all these things, you and me, we are also energies of the Lord. And as soon as that happens, the dead matter seems to come alive because of all this energy flowing through it, and the different bodies and the different mountains and rivers and all the different things in the world start to move and act due to this huge flow of energy through the expansions of Krishna. And everything is interdependent, and ultimately, it all goes back to Krishna, the original cause of all causes. This is knowledge, and there's a lot more to be said about it. But the scientists, they only talk about material nature, and even that, what they say about material nature, not all of it is correct. A lot of it is piecemeal or wrong. And they don't understand, but in some ways they do understand some things, like when they say that nature is acting orderly. Yes, that's true, because God has ordered it. It didn't happen by accident. When they say it happens by accident, that's a false statement. And number two, they say there is the conservation of energy and matter. That means that energy and matter are eternal. You see. Now, those type of statements, what they imply are things that are actually true. So the scientists know a few things, but because of their false ego, they will never admit that behind everything is a superior intelligence than them, because they're envious. And envy is what keeps people in the cycle of birth and death over and over again. So the scientists, or anyone who studies science and thinks that science means observation, experimentation, recognizing patterns, making a theory based on those patterns, this is the work of science. It's not. The experimentation is not necessary. You say, what? Yeah, it's not necessary. You simply study Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. You'll get the correct scientific understanding of life and the purpose of life. Now, the scientists, if you say to them, if you ask them, what is the purpose of human life? What do you think they would say? Anybody? Yeah, to enjoy, to have sense gratification, right, as much as possible. Now, and why are they doing science? Like the next question, why are you doing scientific research? What do you think they would say? To make life what? Easier, longer, more, to increase happiness, blah, 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 right? So everything is based on this concept of easy and happy, right? In other words, sustainable sense gratification. Now, why are they trying to find, why are they trying to control old age, disease, and death? What do you think their answer would be?
Because that gives pain, right? So they want to basically get away of the pain.
They want to live longer and enjoy and not have pain, of course. So you see, it's all based on sense gratification. It's not based on any concept that's true. What is true? What is the purpose of life? Purpose of life is for the living entities to have a chance to go back to Godhead. That's the actual purpose of life. See, they are misleading everything. And as long as we're under their spell of ignorance, we ruin our life. We ruin the chance to go back to Godhead. We remain basically slaves of ignorance. slaves of ignorance. We're working day and night, working to make somebody else rich, and we get a pittance. That's a nice word also, pittance. Look that one up. Pittance, pittance. A lot of nice words in English. So we're working like donkeys to make other people rich, and as long as we get some sense gratification, it convinces us to keep working like a donkey. And in the end, we don't have any time for Krishna consciousness because we're working like a donkey. Go ahead, what does it say?
It's a very small or inadequate amount of money paid to someone as an allowance or wage.
That's it, a pittance. So someone said, what do you mean I'm making $150,000 a year? But if you look at it, you're ruining your whole life making that money. You don't have any time to understand what is the purpose of life. And because you're working so much to make that much money, you think that the purpose of life is that, making the money to have sense gratification. And most people waste their whole life working like donkeys just to have sense gratification. Okay. So, no one has independent existence, just as no electric lamp has independent effulgence. Now, why do people work like this, like donkeys? Because they have no idea that they have an eternal life. They are convinced that when I die, that's it, so I may as well have as much sense gratification as possible. Now, the hippies in the 1960s, they grew up in good families. They had good education, but they revolted. Why? Because they said, well, look, if the purpose is sense gratification, I don't have to go out there and get a job. I can just smoke marijuana and panhandle and somehow or other sell marijuana and have all the sense gratification I want. And that's what they did. They copped out, or they exited the traditional society in America. And by the way, this is one reason why there was a Vietnam War, to stop the hippies from, bowing out of traditional society and traditional values, and killing off a generation of black people and hippies, if possible, or at least putting them in jail. I remember going to, right after I graduated college, I was called to join the Army. So when I went to the first physical examination to join the Army, it was a big room, and there were like hundreds of men in that room, and all kinds of different people. And there were a lot of people, there were not a lot, but there were some people who were like, somehow or other they wanted to get out of this. So I remember this whole group of, not a whole group, but a bunch of black guys, they said, we are communists. If you were a communist, right, they wouldn't let you into the Army. But what would they do to you? They would put you in jail. So I remember that, And everyone, not everyone, but a bunch of people were trying to find some excuse to get out of the Army. So it was very interesting seeing that. But there were other people who are gung-ho of getting into the Army and going to Vietnam and getting killed. So a lot of people went to Vietnam, a lot of men, and Vietnam was full of marijuana. And they would smoke marijuana, get high, and then get killed. Like, I forget how many people died in the Vietnamese War. I mean, it might have been 55,000 Americans. And the whole idea was to stop the hippie movement and to eliminate as many dropouts as possible. Now, you would say, oh, that doesn't make sense. I mean, I don't read that in the history books. No, you don't read it in the history books, because history books are always written by the people who win the war. In this case, the United States lost the war, but the actual real reasons why they went to when they had a war like that and didn't want to win it. That's the other thing. They didn't actually try and win it. They had won the war in World War II because they used the superior weaponry, which they had. They had the same weaponry in the Korean War. They had the same weaponry in the Vietnamese War. They didn't use it. They didn't use it. One atomic bomb would have stopped the war, right? In Korea, and as well as because Russia did not have the atomic bomb, neither did China at that time when there was the Korean War, and China was backing the Koreans, North Koreans, and there was an American general who wanted to use the atomic bomb, and he was taken out. He was MacArthur. MacArthur was one of the greatest generals in American history, and when he proposed to use the atomic bomb on the North Koreans and the Chinese, he wanted to use it on the Chinese also because they were backing North. They took him out, and Americans lost the Korean War also. So we see that sometimes there's political reasons to go to war, in which the country doesn't really want to win the war. It just has some other purpose to do. And the same thing happened in the Afghan War, and the same thing can happen over and over again because the army people want to win the war. The politicians sometimes don't want to win a war, and the people that suffer are the normal people, whether they're North Koreans or they're Americans. These are the ones that have to suffer. In fact, there was a very famous German writer, and he said, the real people that lose a war are the common people who fight. They're always losers. And the winners are either the politicians who start the war in the first place. There's going to be a winner and a loser. But the common people who fight, they're all losers on both sides because they're all going to die. Right? So we have to be very careful. When Krishna told Arjuna to fight, and there was the Kurukshetra war, there was a real purpose. Krishna did not want to see Duryodhana, who was a person who was good in some ways. He had some very good qualities, but he had some bad qualities. He was envious of the Pandavas, and especially of Arjuna. So you don't want a person like that to be leader of the world. So Krishna wanted them defeated. So that was a justified war. And you could say World War II is justified because Hitler was a very evil person. And what he wanted to do would be catastrophic for society. So, therefore, and also the Japanese at that time. So they were defeated. So whoever is more pious is going to win eventually the war. But if both are impious, then it's a disaster for both sides. One demon will win, one other demon will lose, and then next time the demon that lost might win, and the demon that won the previous time will lose. It'll just keep going on like that. Okay, so as long as we are not sure and have faith that God exists and that we have an eternal soul, we will continue to be a donkey, working like a donkey day and night just to have some sense gratification. So in the Canto 2, 7th chapter, text 27, it says, there is no doubt about Lord Krishna being the Supreme Lord. Otherwise, how was it possible for him to kill a giant demon like Putana when he was just on the lap of his mother, to overturn a cart with his leg when he was only 3 months old, to uproot a pair of Arjuna trees so high that they touched the sky when he was only crawling? All these activities are impossible for anyone other than the Lord himself. In the purport, Prabhupada says, one cannot manufacture a God by one's mental speculation or by numerical votes, as has become a practice for the less intelligent class of men. God is God eternally, and an ordinary living entity is eternally a part and parcel of God. God is one without a second, and the ordinary living entities are many without number. As all such living entities are maintained by God himself, and that is the verdict of the Vedic literatures. When Krishna was on the lap of his mother, the demon Putana appeared before his mother and prayed to nurture the child in her lap. Mother Yasoda agreed, and the child was transferred onto the lap of Putana, who was in the garb of a respectable lady. Putana wanted to kill the child by smearing poison on the nipple of her breast. But when everything was complete, the Lord sucked her breast, along with her very air of life, and the demon's gigantic body, said to be as long as 6 miles, fell down. But Lord Krishna did not need to expand himself to the length of the she-demon Putana, although he was quite competent to extend himself more than 6 miles. In his Vamana incarnation, he posed himself as a dwarf Brahmana, but when he took possession of his land, promised by Bali Maharaj, but when he took possession of his land promised by Bali Maharaj, he expanded his footstep to the top of the universe, extending over thousands and millions of miles. So it was not very difficult for Krishna to perform a miracle by extending his bodily feature, but he had no desire to do it because of his deep filial love for his mother, Yasoda. If Yasoda had seen Krishna in her lap, extending 6 miles to cope with the she-demon Putana, then the natural filial love of Yasoda would have been hurt, because in that way Yasoda would have come to know that her so-called son Krishna was God himself. And with the knowledge of the godhood of Krishna, Yasodamai would have lost the temper of her love for Krishna as a natural mother. But as far as Lord Krishna is concerned, he is God always, either as a child on the lap of his mother or as the coverer of the universe, meaning the Virat Rupa. The coverer of the universe, meaning Vamanadev. He does not require to become God by undergoing severe penances, although some men think of becoming God in that way. By undergoing severe austerities and penances, one cannot become one or equal with God, but one can attain most of the godly qualities. A living being can attain godly qualities to a large extent, but he cannot become God, whereas Krishna, without undergoing any type of penance, is God always, either in the lap of his mother or growing up or at any stage of growth. So at the age of only 3 months, he killed the Sakatasura, who had remained hidden behind a cart in the house of Yasodamai. And when he was crawling and was disturbing his mother from doing household affairs, the mother tied him with a grinding pestle. But the naughty child dragged the pestle up to a pair of very high Arjuna trees in the yard of Yasodamai, and when the pestle was struck between the pair of trees, they fell down with a horrible sound. When Yasodamai came to see the happenings, she thought that her child had been saved from the falling trees by the mercy of the Lord, without knowing that the Lord himself, crawling in her yard, had wreaked the havoc. So that is the way of reciprocation of love affairs between the Lord and his devotees. Yasodamai wanted to have the Lord as her child, and the Lord played exactly like a child in her lap, but at the same time played the part of the Almighty Lord whenever it was so required. The beauty of such pastimes was that the Lord fulfilled everyone's desire. In the case of felling the gigantic Arjuna trees, the Lord's mission was to deliver the 2 sons of Kuvera, who were condemned to become trees by the curse of Narada, as well as to play like a crawling child in the yard of Yasoda, who took transcendental pleasure in seeing such activities of the Lord in the very yard of her home. So, this is incomprehensible to the karmis. If you read this, if you go to school tomorrow and you ask the teacher, I want to read something that is scientific and true, and she says, okay, go ahead, and you read this passage that I just read, everyone would laugh at you. Say, well, that's not science. That's mythology. That's your religion. That has nothing to do with science. But this is the real science. And what they're teaching is the fake science. You say. Okay, so then it is a fact that because people do not believe they have an eternal soul, they never become Krishna conscious, and they always remain in a cycle of birth and death. That's just a fact. So this is explained in 2nd Canto, 7th chapter, verse number 36, where it says, "But in the age of Kali, the less intelligent men mistakenly consider the short lifetime of 100 years, now factually reduced to about 40 or 60 years, to be all in all. They are less intelligent because they have no information of the eternity of life. They identify with the temporary material body existing for 40 years and consider it the only principle of life. Such persons are described as equal to asses and bulls. But the Lord, as the compassionate Father of all living beings, imparts unto them the vast Vedic knowledge in short treatises, like the Bhagavad Gita, and for the graduates, the Srimad Bhagavatam. The Puranas and the Mahabharata are also similarly made by Vyasadeva for the different types of men in the modes of material nature, but none of them are independent of the Vedic principles." So, do you think you have an eternal soul? Most people say, well, I don't think so. Or some people might say, yes, but it's possible only through Jesus. Or it's possible only by Allah, or something like that. So at least they have some idea of eternality, and that's good. But most people that have, the more they're educated, the more will say, no, I don't believe I have an eternal soul. But maybe the scientists will find a way to make my body eternal. So they don't even believe they have a soul. They just believe they have a body. And therefore they're trying to, like Calico, what's the name? Google invested $1 billion in this company that they started called Calico to find a way to either extend life or make the human body immortal. And now Amazon has done the same thing, invested $2 billion. They just started a company, I forget what the name of their company is, to find a way to make life immortal and make human body immortal. Of course, they got plenty of money to throw away and waste like that, and they're not going to find any way to make the body immortal. But they want to, because you cannot really be happy unless you have immortality. Nobody's going to be happy by dying, and then their only hope is that there's nothing after death. They don't want to be responsible for anything they've done during this lifetime. All right. So this is all very interesting, but it takes us to another higher vision of things, and this is explained in dialectic spiritualism. The other day I started talking about the logos. I want to speak a little bit more about this, because this is a highly philosophical term, but it has great significance. The Christians have usurped this term, but that's a good word, usurped. But the real meaning, we'll get to the real meaning, because Prabhupada explains it in the dialectic spiritualism. First of all, the logos is originally a principle that was made by the Greeks philosophers. And in classical Greek thought, they refer to something called the universal divine reason. Did you find usurp? Yeah. What's it mean?
A couple of meanings.
It means stealing something.
Take the place of someone in a position of power illegally or supplant.
Right. So it's a hard word to use because it has a very bad meaning, right? You take somebody else's position and, forcefully. You steal something, basically. Anyway, we'll get to that now. So the Greeks, who were impersonalists, they believed that there was what's called a universal divine reason in nature. And they said it was immanent in nature. Immanent means it was part of nature. It's an underlying natural quality of nature. Of course, they're not mentioning a person here. They're just saying nature, right? Yet transcending all oppositions and imperfections in the cosmos and humanity, an eternal and unchanging truth present from time of creation, available to every individual who seeks it, a unifying and liberating revelatory force which reconciles the human with the divine, manifested in the world as an act of God's love in the form of the Christ. So here, the Christians borrowed that idea. The Greeks were not talking about Christ, right? They were talking about in nature, there's an immanent quality. Immanent means it's inborn in it, and it is this divine universal reason. Then the Christians take that concept of the Greeks and say that it actually is Jesus Christ, right? Who will unify everyone and is the epiphany, or the not epiphany, the pure example of universal divine reason. Now, reason, what does that mean? It means that his instructions, the words that he spoke, are the guiding lamp for all living entities. To go back to Godhead, let's say. So logos has a longer definition. The Greek word logos, traditionally meaning word, thought, principle, or speech, has been used among both philosophers and theologians, that means spiritual people. In most of its usages, logos is marked by two main distinctions. The first dealing with human reason, the rationality in the human mind, which seeks to attain universal understanding and harmony. The second, with universal intelligence, the universal ruling force governing and revealing through the cosmos to humankind, that is the divine. Okay, so basically they're talking about God as the divine, and number two, the human rationality by which you arrive at good, let's say, conclusions. That, we shouldn't have war. We should all get along with each other and live peacefully. Why should you have war? You destroy things and kill people. So, and then people should, learn how to control their passions, their lust, their greed, all these things, their hatred. And so this is rationality, right? To live for the common good of everyone. So then, going further, the Greek philosopher Heraclitus appears to be the first to have used the word logos to refer to a rational divine intelligence, which today is sometimes referred to in scientific discourse as the mind of God. The early Greek philosophical tradition, known as Stoicism, which held that every human participates in a universal and divinely ordained community, then used the Logos doctrine as a principle of human law and morality. The Stoics believed that to achieve freedom, happiness, and meaning, one should attune one's life to the wisdom of God's will, manifest in the second distinction above of Logos. The Christian Church then extended the Stoic idea of the universal community by claiming the universal nature of salvation and the potential for all humans to participate in. In other words, go back to Godhead. That's what they're talking about. In the New Testament, the phrase word, logos of God, found in the Gospel of St. John, the first chapter, first verse, and elsewhere, shows God's desire and ability to speak to the human. The Christian expression of this communication is evidenced in the Christ, who is the Word become flesh. In these three biblical words, Christianity points to the possibility of union between the human and the divine, or the personal and the absolute. God's logos, which the Christ represents, acts as a bridge between the human's inner spiritual needs and the answer proclaimed by the Christian message. Okay? The Christians make a big thing of this, right? Now let's see what Prabhupada says about this. So there was a philosopher named Hegel. And he also talked about, he says, in order to understand reality, we must examine the interrelationships of things. That means connectivity of things, right? So we started talking about that, right, today. The interconnectivity of Krishna and everything. So even Hegel was talking about that. He's a German in the 18th century. So Prabhupada says, we are also teaching that. Say, we're also teaching this interrelationships of things, or interconnectivity. The origin of everything is Krishna, and Krishna's energetic expansions constitute everything. Parasya brahmana sakshaj jata vedo hi havyadvat devanam purushanganam yagena purusham yajati. O fire god, you are a part of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Hari, and you carry to him all the offerings of sacrifices. So talking about Agni. Therefore, we request you to offer to him the sacrificial ingredients we are offering the demigods, for the Lord is the real enjoyer. This is Srimad Bhagavatam, 5th canto, 20th verse, 20th chapter, 17th verse. Prabhupada. Physical existence is heat and light, and these energies emanate from Krishna, the original light. Everything material and spiritual is composed of heat and light, and one who has eyes to see that is spiritual, which is spiritual, can see. And one who has eyes to see that which is spiritual can see. Okay, so what does he mean, heat and light? He's talking about Brahma Jyoti. That's the effulgence that emanates from the body of Krishna. This is what sustains everything in the spiritual world and the material world, because it enters the material world and is reflected off of the sun throughout the whole universe, and everything depends on the heat and light of the sun in the material world, as it does on the bodily effulgence of Krishna in the spiritual world. Okay. So, fast forward to what we read today, the interconnectiveness, where Prabhupada said, the individual living entities are completely dependent on the total energy of the Supreme Purusha. No one has independent existence, just as no electric lamp has independent effulgence. Each and every electrical instrument depends fully on the total powerhouse. The total powerhouse, that means the, like Puget Sound powerhouse. The total powerhouse depends on the reservoir of water for generating electricity. So electricity can be generated by water. You have a dam, and you have turbines, and as the water gushes through the power of all that, of those millions and millions of gallons of water held in the dam, when they open some receptacles to receive the water, for transit of the water, it comes in with a huge amount of energy, and it runs these turbines that create electricity. Now, they also make electricity using petroleum, and they also make electricity by using wind. But the main electricity that they made, like you look at Washington State, it has about, I would say, 10 or plus dams on rivers. And most of the electricity in Washington is made by water that goes through the turbines that are connected to the dams. Okay, so it says, the total powerhouse depends on the reservoir of water for generating electricity. Water depends on the clouds, yes. And the clouds depend on the sun. And the sun depends on creation. And the creation depends on the movement of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thus, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the cause of all causes. So, who created the sun? Krishna. Where is the Brahma Jyoti coming from? Krishna. Right? So, in that way, Krishna is the cause of all causes and all interconnectedness in existence. Well, now, how does this connect to the Logos? Well, the Logos is, it basically means the Word of God. And we have the direct word of God, much more direct than the Bible and the Quran. We have, because the Quran was spoken mainly by the Archangel Gabriel to Muhammad. And then Muhammad was able to remember it all, and he spoke it, and then people memorized. He would go up on the mountain where there's Medina somewhere, and he would hear Gabriel speak to him. Then he would come down and repeat what he heard, and then other people would memorize it. And this way, this went on for a period of time. It didn't all happen at once. And this way, the Quran was eventually written down. First it was memorized by different people. One person couldn't memorize the whole thing. And then eventually it was written down. Well, in the case of Jesus, he's the Son of God. And he comes and he speaks. Like before Jesus, there were different great personalities like Noah and Abraham and Isaac, and these were all prophets. So Jesus is also considered a prophet, but he's a special prophet because he's considered the Son of God. And the words that they speak are coming from God originally, and therefore they're divine, and they're instructions by which people organize their life. Well, that's why it says in the Gospel of St. John, in the beginning there was the Word, and the Word was God, and God was the Word. So Krishna is speaking in the Bhagavad Gita. He's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And our purpose in life should be to hear Krishna every day. And from hearing Bhagavad Gita, spoken by genuine devotees, and hearing also Srimad Bhagavatam, which is all about Krishna only. That should be our purpose in life. That is the divine logos that unifies people. And Prabhupada said, if devotees sit down and hear class at least twice a day, they will come to a consensus understanding of the philosophy. A consensus understanding. Look that word up, consensus. It's a very important word. It means that everybody's disagreements will go away, basically, right? Because they have the same understanding of the Shastric statements. So what's it say, consensus?
It's like a general agreement.
Yeah, general agreement. When everybody agrees, then whatever you decide to do is going to be successful. Just like when we first started our Ananda Mela festival, most people didn't believe that we could do it. Most of the devotees, didn't believe. Only a handful of devotees believed we could do it. Everyone thought it's impossible. We can't have a big festival like that, And the few devotees who believed, I'm telling you, there were only about 4 or 5 devotees out of, about 80 that believed that we could do it. And the other people, besides the 4 or 5, did not cooperate because they thought it was a waste of time and money. And then fast forward, 2 weeks before the festival, some devotees saw that it was possible because of, we made all these displays and they were extremely beautiful, and it looked like we were going to do it, and the whole thing was going to cost $80,000. This is when we were just beginning to build this temple, and most of the devotees did not believe that it was possible and thought it was a waste of money and a waste of time. Right? So they didn't cooperate. But then when they saw, 2 weeks before, a few of them started coming and wanted to join in helping make the displays because it was extremely artistic and very, very, and that was all because of Sanjay Gupta, who was a brilliant artist. And then as it came closer, like the last week, more devotees came because they saw it was actually going to happen and it was going to be something big. And then when it actually happened, no one could believe it. It was like an amazing festival, the first major Indian festival in the Seattle area. And it was a huge success. And because that we did that festival, we spent $80,000 to do it. because we spent the money and did it, we were able to raise $3.5 million to build this temple. But 90% of devotees, more than 90% of devotees did not believe it was possible and refused to cooperate. It's only in the last 2 weeks that some of them, not all of them, just some of them started coming. And when it actually happened, all the rest realized, my God, this is happening. And it's a huge success. So, therefore, if we as a community here on a daily basis, there's Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, we'll come to a consensus understanding of the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, and that means that we will all cooperate, and when you have a large number of people that cooperate, you can perform miraculous feats. You can do miraculous things. This is the real understanding of the Logos. It's this universal divine rationality by which everyone unifies, comes together, works cooperatively, and everyone contributes to making something successful that's to glorify God. All glories to Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Are there any questions? No questions at all? Whoa. What time is it? 7:30. Wow. Okay, let's have Guru Puja. Huh? You want to sing?
जय प्रभुपदा 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 श्री गुरु चरण पद्मा केवल बखती सद्मा चरण पद्मा
केवल बखती सद्मा
बंधु मोहि सावधान माते
बंधु मोहि सावधान माते
बंधु मोहि सावधान माते जहर प्रसादे भाई भवतोरिया जाय
जहर प्रसादे भाई भवतोरिया जाय
कृष्ण प्राप्ति हो जहाँ ते मुख पद्मवाक्य चित्ते ते कोरिया क्या আরানা করি হো মানে আশা আরানা করি হো মানে আশা श्री गुरु चराने रति ऐसे उत्तम गति
श्री गुरु चराने रति ऐसे उत्तम गति
ये प्रसादे पूरे सर्वाशा
ये प्रसादे पूरे सर्वाशा
ये प्रसादे पूरे सर्वाशा
ये प्रसादे पूरे
चक्षुदान दिल जे जन्मे जन्मे प्रभु से
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 दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशितो
दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशितो
दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशितो
दिव्य ज्ञान हृदय प्रकाशितो
प्रेम भक्ति जहाँ होते अविद्या विनाश जाते
भक्ति जहाँ होते अविद्या विनाश जाते
वेदे गाय जहर चरितो श्री गुरु करुण सिंधु अधम जनर बंधु श्री गुरु करुण सिंधु अधम जनर बंधु लोकना लोकेर जीवाना लोकना लोकेर जीवाना आह प्रभु करो दया देह मोरे पदचया आह प्रभु करो दया देह मोरे पदचया आह प्रभु करो दया देह मोरे पदचया बेजास गुशुक त्रिभुवाना श्रीला प्रभु पतित पवाना गुरुदेव लोयल शराना प्रभुपा 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 जय जय प्रभुपा Gurudev, 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 Jaya Jaya Gurudev.
Jaya Gurudeva, Jaya Gurudeva, Jaya Gurudeva, Jaya Gurudeva.
Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine.
Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine.
Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashatya Deshatarine.
Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashatya Deshatarine.
Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram,
Ram Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Jai Om Vishnupad, Paramahansa Parvajikachasta Tadasatarashi, Shri Srimad, His Divine Grace, Shri Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj, Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai. Anantakoti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Shikaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar. Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Sam Kunda Radha Kunta Giri Govardhana Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Shri Mayapura Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Tulasi Devi Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Ganga Maya Ki Jai. Jamuna Maya Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Nitai Gaura Premanandi. All glorious to the assembled devotee. All glorious to the assembled. All glorious to the assembled. All glorious to Shri Guru and Shri Guranga. All glorious to Srila Prabhupada Patita Pavani Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutili Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami. Namaste Saraswati Devi. Gauravani Pacharini Nivasesa Sunyavani Paskati Lasacharani. The lotus feet of our spiritual master are the only way by which we can attain the pure devotional service. I bow down to his lotus feet with great honor. By his grace, one can cross the ocean of material suffering and obtain the mercy of Krishna. My only wish is to have my consciousness purified by the words emanating from his lotus mouth. Attachment to his lotus feet is the perfection that fulfills all desires. He opens my darkened eyes and fills my heart with transcendental knowledge. He is the Lord. By him, ignorance is destroyed. The Vedic scriptures sing of his character. Our spiritual master, the ocean of mercy, friend of the poor and Lord in mercy of devotees. O Master, be merciful unto us. Give us the shade of your lotus feet. Your fame is spread throughout all the three worlds. We take shelter of your lotus feet. Srila Prabhupada, Patita Pavan Ki Jai. Namaste Saraswati Devi.